Here we go.
Rico.
Company business. Thank you very much.
Well, welcome to another episode of Sky Blue History podcast. We're going to take a deep dive into the rich past of Coventry City Football Club. I'm Claudio, and tonight we're joined, of course, by our club historian, Jim Brown, and he's the reason behind this podcast, of course. And for a very special episode, we've got a guest who holds a special place in the hearts of Sky Blue fans, a player who came through the club's youth system in the late 60s during a time when Coventry City's youth setup was truly one of the best in the country. He made over 200 appearances for the Sky Blues and became a fan's favourite for his passion and dedication on the pitch. However, his move to Midlands rivals Aston Villa, although heartbreaking for many, probably played a pivotal role in helping the club avoid another potential financial crisis. Tonight we are pleased, we're very pleased actually, to welcome Dennis Mortimer to our podcast. And good evening, Dennis.
Good evening, guys.
And good evening, Jim.
Good evening, guys.
Yeah,
good to
and
see you.
Jim, it's fair to say Dennis was part of one of the club's strongest youth systems at the time. And it was in an era when Coventry City had the ability to discover and nurture talent from all around the country. So, Jim, let's start there then. What made the youth setup so successful in those days?
Well, that's a good question to start with. Well, I suspect it was Jimmy Hill who was the main driver behind getting a good youth system, because like now, if you've got a good youth system producing, or a good academy system as they call it now, producing a good talent, it can save you millions in the transfer market. And you know, Dennis can support me on this, but in the early 70s, virtually the whole of the Coventry City team were homegrown. They very rarely went out and spent big money in the transfer market. But Jimmy was supported. We had a very, very strong support team around him. Pat Saywood, who was probably the main driver of the youth setup at Coventry. You had Alan Dix, who was the assistant manager. You had who else?
Peter Hill. Peter Hill,
yes, trainer.
Yeah. And then there was who was the guy now that used to take us for weight training? There was another guy in there as well. Trying to remember him, Bill, guys.
But you also had Jack Levers, didn't you? Who was the education?
Yeah, Jack was our educational officer.
Yeah,
that's what Jack did. He tried to persuade us to go to college. Yeah. It's not very successful at times. It's difficult to try and find something for me to do. Yeah,
So
I ended up going into to the college at in Coventry, and I went to do I put myself down to do metal work. Yeah, I was quite good with my hands. Yeah. But I remember going there once and thought, no, this isn't for me. And I didn't go again.
You realise
Jack had to find something else for me. It's something which I thought, well, if I didn't make it as a footballer, I don't think I like the idea of being stuck in a factory, with a lathe and everything. But so I soon got out of that one. But Jack was there for quite a few years, when I was there looking after the guys' educational needs, and he did a good job. He was a nice man. He's a nice man.
You're obviously from Liverpool, Dennis.
I am, yeah.
So, did you have an allegiance before you got signed up by Coventry City?
Yeah, the reason why I'm dipping out here in your pictures, I've got a picture here of the team from 67, 68, obviously when I joined, and I'm trying to figure out who the other coach was. Yeah, his name, and I'm struggling a little. That's why I keep ducking. I've got a picture in front of me. Yeah, a guy that did come was Jimmy Andrews.
Right. Yeah, that was
Remember him?
after Noel came, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, because obviously when I joined, Jimmy was leaving.
Yeah.
He was on his way out. Yeah,
Yes.
so I didn't really get to see Jimmy much because training was done by Alan Dix and obviously Peter Hill and Pat Sayward.
Yes.
So you know so I don't remember shaking hands with Jimmy or anything like that. You know.
So you were in 1967. You left. Did you leave school in 67 at 15?
Yes, that was it. Yeah.
And then you came straight to Coventry as an apprentice, did you?
Well, I mean, for 6 weeks, I was at the football club in the school holiday without a contract.
Right.
Right. And at the end of that 6 weeks, I decided that I needed to go in and speak to somebody about what they were going to do because I hadn't signed any apprentice forms. I wasn't. When I went down there, I wasn't offered an apprenticeship.
Right.
I was just asked to go along and you know to see whether I was suitable for them. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And I arrived with Ivan Crossley.
Uh-huh.
And the scout who brought me in was a guy called Alf Walton.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I've got a lovely photograph here of him. This is him,
All right. Yes, it is.
right? See, this is him relaxing.
So that's
Right,
the Alf Walton, the regional scout for Coventry City. So was he
well,
this
he wasn't,
the scout
no,
up on the
he was
northwest then?
for Lancashire.
Yeah.
For
Yeah.
Lancashire, you see, and he'd knocked on my door. But before he'd knocked on the door, I lived in Kirby. Before he'd knocked on the door, another guy had knocked on the door from Bury, and but no one was in except me. And now he couldn't talk to me because he needed my dad or my mum
Right.
there to be able to talk. But when Alf Walton turned up, I already knew he was coming because in all my life at school, I'd never been called into the headmaster's office. And I got a call one day to go and see the headmaster. And I'm thinking to myself, well, what have I done? You know, I never get into any trouble at all at school because I did like going to school actually. Anyway, what it was, I got into the office and he sat me down and said, look, we've had a letter from Coventry City. Because this must have been the way that you had to approach any young players, you see. It must have been that you needed to contact the school first. I don't know why,
Uh-huh.
but he'd contacted the school, and so the headmaster told me then, oh look, I've got this, and in his great way, and in this, you know, he said, well, you don't want to become a footballer, do you? No, sir, I don't. I don't know. No, it's not something I really want to do, you know. So I went out of the room afterwards, sort of rubbing my hands and thinking, "Living heck, I've got 6 weeks of football at Coventry." Anyway, Alf turned up a couple of days later, and my dad was in, and we sat down, and he said, "Look, we want to take your lad to Coventry." And you know, in those days, no motorways.
No.
So I don't know which way we would have gone to get there because he came and picked me up, and
Yeah.
he had Ivan with him, who was from Bury, because Alf was from Bury as well.
Right.
So he brought us down. So I don't know which way we'd have gone, but we got there in the end. I don't know how long it took.
Yeah.
Probably the longest journey I'd ever been on in my life.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm at Coventry now, and this is I suppose you could say it's a dream come true, to be honest, because you know the times I would dream of playing at Anfield and playing for Liverpool. You know, it's because that was my team. It was there in the back of your mind all the time, and here's an opportunity. But the great thing was is now out for 6 weeks of that holiday, my school holiday. I'm going to be kicking a football, which I would have been doing anyway if I'd have stayed at home. But this was the real deal. This was, yeah. So for 6 weeks, I was running around and playing football and really enjoying it and everything. And there was other lads there at the same time. I mean, people that were there. I've got a picture of them all there. Bobby Parker. He would have been one maybe. What's the name? Billy Rafferty. People like Graham Padden, Trevor Gold. These were apprentices at the time. Willie Carr. So there was a mixture of the younger ones like me and also the older ones like Willie and Graham Padden. And they were moving into their Jeff Blockley. They were moving into their final apprenticeship year. Anyway, so after 6 weeks, I've sat down with Pat Saywood and Alan Dix in Alan Dix's office because I think Jimmy had gone by now, and Noel was coming in. Just before the season started, and I sat down with him, and I'm looking. I've gone and said, "Look, guys, what are you doing with me? You haven't told me what you want me. You haven't told me whether I'm going to get a contract or anything." I said, "I need to know because if you're not going to take me on as an apprentice, I'll go back to Liverpool or Kirby. I'll go back to school because that was my option. To go back to school because that was the final year where you could leave at 15. The following year, it went up to 16. So I was one of that last group that ever got a chance to escape at 15. So I mean, I looked at Alan Dix and I looked at Pat Saywood and said, "Look, can you tell me what's going to happen?" Well, the pair of them gave a little look to one another, and I thought, "Aye, what's going on? What's going to happen now?" I wondered what was going. They both looked at each other, and then Alan sort of turned back to face me, and he didn't have a smile on his face. So I'm sort of getting into this. I'm starting to feel like this ain't going to happen. And he goes, "We're not going to take you on. We're not going to give you an apprenticeship." So I'm just about to burst into tears, as you could imagine. And then he started laughing, the pair of them. Typical humour of adults. Yeah.
Oh, God.
Yeah, they started
Very
laughing.
mean.
And it looked, really mean, and then Pat said, "Go on, off you go. We'll get you all signed up on Monday. We get your contract sorted out." Yeah. So that was how it all started. But halfway through that 6 weeks, my mother phoned the club because we didn't have a phone at home.
Right.
And I mean, and I wasn't the kind of person that probably thought about writing letters.
Yeah.
I was too busy playing football and enjoying myself. Yeah. So I hadn't sent anything home to my mother, and she'd phoned the club up actually to find out if I was still there. She had no idea, you see, because we couldn't correspond with. I couldn't phone or anything. Yeah, and so
did your parents have a car or to come and visit you?
No. Well, my dad did, but there's no way he was going to come down. He was too busy. He never came down. Like the other lad, Ivan, who joined with me, his mum and dad came down every weekend. When we played games. I mean, he was his parents were really there for him. I mean, my parents were just back at home because they had to look after too many kids.
Right.
I had
Dennis,
4 brothers at that time. Yeah.
Dennis, did they think you'd actually make it? Were they confident you'd get through and get signed up?
We never spoke about it.
Right.
We never spoke about it. See, I had an older brother who was a year older than me, who was a terrific footballer, and he was taller than me as well, and he could play centre forward, centre half, or midfield. So he could play either of those positions, which he did throughout his sort of years playing for KB boys in the school, and he had an offer to go to Blackburn that previous season, and they were in the first division then. He didn't want to do it. Didn't do it. Yeah, and I know he would have become a successful player because he could play anywhere. But he didn't. He turned it down, and he just in the end he went into his own business and everything. But
Yeah.
but so the following year there was no way I was going to give up an opportunity. To if I could, and so I got the contract. Yeah, and the contract was for. I've got it here as well.
Oh, brilliant.
I got it here. This is my first contract. Yeah.
Right.
Fantastic.
At £7 a week. Right. £8 in the second year, and then £10 in the third year.
Was that good for that era as an apprentice?
No idea. And was I bothered?
No.
I because I was living a dream now. I was playing football and going to play.
I think it was. I think it was quite a good wage, because I left school in '68 and went to work as a trainee in a stockbroker's office, and I was getting £4.10 a week.
Right, so it was good. Yeah,
yeah. I think you were well paid.
I think probably though, from your point of view, I think what happened after those 3 years, you probably would have got a contract, or you would have been full-time employment. With football, that wasn't as secure, Jim.
No.
I had a 3-year contract as an apprentice, but that was regular for everybody. Yeah. 3-year apprentice. So the football club would obviously use that as a way to bring players in. And but at the end of that 3 years, but it was good, because for me, like it was I don't know, £6. I was probably used to about £1 a week when I had a paper round. But getting £6 a week, it was brilliant. And so, but it wasn't. I suppose in those days you didn't think of the money. You just thought of the football and the career you wanted. And that was what it was all about in those days. Yeah, it was just about that.
Yeah, presumably your lodgings was all free, wasn't it?
Yeah. So all that was paid for, and all your food. I mean, in those early days, in those first few weeks as well, we didn't have Wrighton, the training ground. It was being built at that time.
Right.
So we were being sort of. We were going to places just outside of Coventry, to do our training and everything. But Wrighton on Dunsmore was being built, and I think Coventry were maybe one of the first, Jim, who had a
I'm sure they were.
Training. I think they were. Yeah, had a proper training ground. So that was great, and I think that was great for us young players, because before we got the training ground, if you wanted to go and kick a ball or anything, if we used to get a van up to the training ground and then come back, because obviously we'd take the footballs and the players would go there as well, and they come back. But then we couldn't get back to that training ground again because no one really to take us there. Yeah.
Right.
So you were left there, but most of the time anyway, as an apprentice, we were cleaning boots, cleaning the ground, doing odd jobs and everything, which was part of the apprenticeship. And so it was a situation where it was great when we got the training ground, because now we had that facility, so we could go out onto the football fields without having to get a lift. To the training ground where it was. So it was great. It was great. I mean, I think they probably were one of the first to have a training ground, and there was 2 pitches, which got extended to 3 eventually. But it was. I just think, I think of today, when I joined Villa, they just had their training ground opened.
Right.
That was So this is like 75. Yeah. So from 69, we'd had a training ground. Coventry didn't have one. Villa didn't have one.
No.
Yeah. So they were just. So I think Coventry were way ahead, I think, of most clubs.
Yeah.
Not
Well, again,
competition.
that's Jimmy Hill again, I think, isn't it?
Probably, yeah.
Yeah.
Probably realised that this is what you got to do. Yeah.
Now, Jim, I reckon you've got a list of questions you got for Dennis, haven't you?
Well, I was going to, I wanted to, I did a bit of research into the reserve team for that first season you were there. And you broke through into the reserve team near the end of the season when you were, I think, when you were just over 16.
Right.
You got your debut for the reserves. I don't know if you remember it, but it was Ipswich away.
Yeah, I do. Yeah. What a trip! What a what a trip for my first game. It couldn't be a local game. It had
No.
to be Ipswich, which was like a 10-hour journey in those days. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, but I remember because Jimmy Andrews then was the coach
Yeah.
of the reserves. Yeah. Did I
Right.
play?
You played, yeah, and it was a football combination game, and
All
it
right.
was
Yes. Yes.
it was obviously Noel had taken over about 6 months before,
Yes.
and
Yes.
there were a mixture of old and
Yes.
old and young players.
Yes.
For instance, Dietmar played,
Yes.
and Mick Kearns played,
Yeah. Yes.
and remember Brian Lewis?
Yeah. I remember Brian.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then there was some youngsters, yourself, Bob Dobbing played,
Yeah.
and
Who was in goal?
Martin Clamp was in goal.
All right. Yes. Yes.
But he got, I'm in touch with Martin. He lives in Canada now.
Right.
And he's been over a couple of times and been to games, but he was stretchered off after 56 minutes.
Right.
And of course, no substitutes in those days. And Brian
No.
Lewis went in goal.
All right. He did well.
And, well, you lost 4-0 though.
Well, that was our excuse, Jim.
Yeah.
We had to put another goalkeeper in.
And then you got another game.
Was Graham Padden play? Did Graham Padden play?
No, he didn't.
What about Willie? Was Willie in the first team by then?
Willie was in the first team. And of course, it was in the middle of this is the end of April, 68.
Yes.
And the first team were in a relegation battle, weren't they?
Yeah. Oh, dead right. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So Willie was in the first team squad. Mick Coop played at centre forward.
Blimey.
No.
That's why he lost 4-0, Jim. He ain't going to score, is he?
Pat Morrissey.
Yes, I remember. I remember all the names. Yes.
Yeah. Robin Hayward. Do you remember him?
I don't remember Robin. No.
He was a right back. Brian Taylor.
Jeff Blockley didn't play.
No.
Trevor Gold.
No. It might. I tell you why. There might have been a clash with the youth cup team.
Probably. Yes.
Yeah, because
yes, because they got to the final.
Yeah, that's right.
Yes.
So Jeff Blockley and Willie Carr and
Graham Padden.
Yes, Trevor Gold. They were all in the youth team.
Yeah. Bobby Allen.
Yeah, he'd have been in the youth team, wouldn't he? Yeah.
They were all there. Trevor Sinclair.
He was a right winger, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was a winger. Yeah,
another one. He's another one of Alf Walton's Lancashire boys, isn't he?
Yeah. And the other one was because he brought a few. Alan Dugdale was one as well.
Of course, yeah.
Alan Dugdale and another little lad called Clegg. What was his first? Dennis Hogg.
He
was another one. He came down with Alan. He came down with he came down with Alan at the same time. Dennis. Yeah. But Ernie Machin was around. Ian Gibson was around. Yeah.
Ernie Machin was spotted by Alf Walton as well.
Was he?
Right. Yeah, he came from Bolton.
He was a very good spotter, wasn't he? This Alf Walton.
Yeah. Well, we'd like to think so. But no, and because he got to the final that year, and the thing wasn't in that first season. So here's me now going off to be part of the reserves, obviously because of that reason of the youth team in playing, and because the Ivan Crossley, who came up with me, was the same age as me. He actually played at right back in the youth team all that season.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he was way ahead of me
Yes.
from the point of view of getting into,
But
getting.
he never made the first team.
He never made the first team. No,
No.
he signed pro, but then he left. He didn't get an opportunity. No,
Yeah.
but it was, he was this tough tackling fullback, and he was, and I could see how he fitted in really with the youth team.
Yeah. That was a
And,
very
and
good
obviously
youth
they
team.
lost the final. Yeah, but he played, and he was part of that squad. Yeah.
Well, yeah, but
But
they. I don't know who was it said it to me. I think it might have been Jeff Blockley said. No, it was Trevor Gould, because Trevor was in the Youth Cup final team,
yes,
and
yes,
we won the first leg against Burnley at Highfield Road. I think it was
yes.
2-1, and then he had to go to Turf Moor for the second leg, and our goalkeeper was Dickie Dighton. Do you remember
Right.
him?
Yeah.
And he got injured in about the 20th minute, and Trevor had to go in goal.
Right.
And Burnley beat us. I think it was 2-0. But they had Steve Kindon.
Yeah. He was. Yeah, he was a
Dave
handful. Him.
Thomas.
Well, he
Yeah,
was.
and Dave
He was.
Thomas.
Yeah. Stevie would have been playing against Ivan, and
Yeah,
that would have been a tough game for Ivan because that was his first year at the
yeah,
football club. And he'd done really well to be in. He was the only one really from that cohort that came in, at the
yeah,
start of the season, who actually got into the team. Yeah, the rest
yeah,
of us were just playing A and B games. Yeah.
yeah.
So that did I play any more? I didn't play any more reserved games, did I?
Yes, you played. You played it against Northampton at home
Okay.
on May the 3rd.
Right.
And again, though, you see that the first team, I think, were at West Ham the following day, and the youth team were had played the final, the first leg at that week. So it was pretty much the same. Oh, well, Alan Dickey was in goal. Do you remember Alan Dickey?
I do. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
He was Bill's number 2 and didn't play many games.
No, he didn't, did he?
Yeah. And Malcolm Keeley played, and Billy Rafferty played.
Yeah, Billy. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what I find?
Yeah,
you know what I find amazing about, when I talk to people about goalkeepers in those days, and they never wore gloves.
Mm.
Bill Glazer, I remember, but they never wore gloves. Yeah,
A bit of spit.
You
That's
know
all
what I
he
mean.
used.
And the balls in those days were more stingy than they are today. I mean, they were they'd been used maybe a few times. So if a bit of water got in, it became very. But Bill never wore gloves. And a lot of people are quite astounded by that. And I think Peter Bonetti might have been the first one. He brought out a pair of gloves, and they were green. And I think he might have been the first goalkeeper to wear gloves, but they weren't anything like today. They weren't padded. They were just a pair of gloves that you put on to keep your hands warm.
I think the first keeper I can remember wearing padded gloves was Sepp Meyer for West Germany, where he looked like he got clown's gloves on. They were massive, weren't they? I'm sure they had an extra inch on the end of the fingers or something.
Yes, well, they did. They did. They were longer, you see, because that extra touch, that extra inch, just that little touch could deflect the ball away. So
yeah, they definitely were dodgy pair of gloves. They were.
They were like that. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
So
no,
you made it one sub appearance in the final game away to Birmingham.
Okay.
That would have been at St Andrews.
Because that was the combination. Yeah, that was the combination, Jim. Because the following season we went to the Central League.
That's right. That's right.
Which was a much better for us because it was more northern.
Yeah.
Whereas the other one was like a lot. The football had a lot of London teams in. Yeah, which was always a bit of a pain, to go into London and play games. But I didn't stop. I wasn't playing in the reserves at the start of that season.
No, actually, the following season,
I played.
you only played 2 reserve games at the end of the
probably
season.
did. Yeah.
So,
And that was, and we were building now another good youth team.
Yeah.
Because we didn't do anything that season, but it was a season afterwards now where I'm in my 3rd year.
Yeah.
Yeah, and people like Bobby Parker, Alan Dugdale, Alan Green, Les Cartwright, Jimmy Holmes, yeah, and our famous goalkeeper, David Icke.
David Icke.
Yeah,
Excellent on crosses, of course.
Sorry?
Excellent on crosses, of course.
Yeah.
Dennis, you make 2 reserve appearances at the end of 68-9.
Right.
And 2 months into the following season, you're in the first team squad.
I know.
What happened?
I've no idea. I've no idea.
Did you suddenly grow 3 inches or something?
I was in my 3rd year, so obviously now I'm getting stronger. I've learned the game a bit more about what. See, Jim, I don't remember like Pat ever saying to me, "Look, this is the type of player you could be." Yeah, from the point of view of how it turned out. No one ever no one ever said to me like, "Look, you get the ball and you've got a chance to run with it. Especially if there's a space in front of you." And no, I didn't go on a training field with Pat and he put like, players out on the pitch and said, "Look, when you see this situation, that's when I want you to go at them with the ball." So I'm developing my own game really,
right?
Without any help, I felt from the coaches, from the point of view how they wanted me to play. Yeah, because I might play on the wing. Yeah,
Dennis, was that instinctive then? Was it the fact you used to carry the ball like that then?
Well, as a kid, it was many years that film Forrest Gump came out. Yeah, and I was as a kid, that was me. I ran everywhere. I just as a kid I just ran everywhere. It was me. That was what it was all about, was running and playing football and stuff like that. But I can only think it just developed through myself and what I felt was needed in that position. Yeah, because I see my first game for the first team was Liverpool in the FA Cup.
That must have been amazing being a Liverpool fan.
Well, it was really, but the weird thing about it was played on snow. Do you remember, Jim?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was, that was sort of.
That was your first. That was your first start, wasn't it?
That was my first start. I'd been involved with the West Ham game.
Yes. 5 minutes. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. But my debut was that sort of that game against Liverpool.
Liverpool, yeah. In the FA Cup.
Yeah. And one of the interesting things before that, Jimmy, remember we got to the FA Cup final that year.
The Youth Cup, yeah.
Yeah, and we played Tottenham. And we had to go to a replay.
Yeah, and another replay.
And we lost 1-0 after the replay. But in the game at home, when we were, we'd lost 1-0 away, and then we were leading at home, and that was the game where Graham Souness got sent off.
Yeah.
I thought he tried to kick me, but reading the reports, he tried to throw a punch at me. Well, he did throw a punch, but it didn't land anywhere. But the referee saw the intent and actually sent him off. Yeah. So that was my first ever encounter with Mr. Souness. But we never really had any bad games against each other. There was never any animosity between the two of us. He was just one of those players that got booked a lot but didn't get sent off a lot, Jim.
In fairness, I think Graham Souness got worse when he went to Rangers.
In my mind, I honestly think I've always said this has been one of my sort of sort of stories, this Graham Souness thing, is that I think it was the only time he ever got sent off in English football.
Yeah.
But then when he
You're
went
probably
to
right.
Scotland, when he went to, because people thought he might have got sent off a lot more, but he got booked a lot.
Yeah.
So he would miss, yeah, 4 or 5 bookings and he'd be out of the game. Yeah.
Yeah.
But a lot of people used to think he was actually getting sent off, but I don't think he did actually. I think it was that was the only.
In those days, the only way you got sent off is if you threw a punch. And you know,
Oh yeah, because you could break
bookings-
someone's leg in those days and get away with it.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, yeah.
Very much
Frank
so.
Whitmore broke George Curtis's leg and
Yeah,
stayed
yeah.
on the pitch. Yeah.
Yes, it was a tough old game. Yeah.
But obviously from the West Ham game around October time, you were in the squad. You were in the first team squad, weren't you?
Yes, I was, and I think
so. You know, City had a very strong midfield. You know, we had Ernie Machin, Ian Gibson, Willie Carr. You know, it was a very, very strong midfield, wasn't it?
It was. I mean, just going back to that youth team game. So we had what's the name? Colin Randall was in our team as well. Mick Maguire was in there as well, Jim.
Yeah,
very good player. Trevor
Dougie.
Smith. And Johnny Stevenson was there as well. You know, the Scottish player who was. We had a really good team, and we were.
They all had careers, didn't they? In the game,
Pardon?
they all went on to have careers in the game as well.
A lot. I look at that squad, and I think I look at that squad now, and probably Trevor Smith maybe didn't get.
Trevor Smith, no, he played for Walsall a bit, but not a lot.
Yes, he never really. But people like Les Cartwright, Colin Randall, and all that, and
Jimmy
Les
Holmes.
Cartwright. You know, Bobby Parker obviously played in the first team with Dougie. Yeah, I mean, he was a classy player, Bob. You know, so and Jimmy Holmes, obviously. So it was a
Jimmy Holmes was only 15 that season.
Yes, yeah.
Jimmy was
very
15.
Successful team.
Yeah.
And so there were a lot of, as you said earlier, Claudio, there was a lot of good players that were coming through. So there must have been a good scouting system because, you know, like if I look at that list now, I think the locus, the only one that was probably, well, 2 were local, I think. One was Trevor Smith because I think he was from Birmingham, and the other one was David Icke. He was from Leicester. But the rest of us now.
Yeah, Bobby. Well, Bobby was a Coventry lad, wasn't he? Bobby Parker.
Was he Coventry lad?
Yeah.
All right, okay.
Okay, so as you say, the most of the rest were from Lancashire, I think.
Yeah,
they were. Yeah.
Good old Alf.
Yeah.
Should have a statue of Alf at the SBFTV.
Yes.
No, it was.
So you came into
going back to then as well, is that you never thought that you in those days you never thought you were going to be in the first team at such an early age. I never did. I thought it'd be years because I remember there were certain players at Coventry, Jim, who I just felt that they'd been there for years, never played in the first team. And there's a couple here on this picture I've got, and they'd been there for years, but had never kicked the ball in the first team. Yeah, and so from that point of view, you could be in the reserves practically all your career.
Yeah.
Because no subs.
No
subs. Yeah.
Yeah, the other interesting thing about that youth team is that you were only 17, coming up to 18.
Yes.
Bobby was the same age.
Bobby was a year Bobby was a year younger than me. Alan was a year younger. Yeah.
Yeah. But you and Bobby were both in the first team at 17.
Yes.
And both, and the Spurs team had as soon as I wasn't in he hadn't made the first team.
There, no.
Steve Perryman was.
Yes.
Steve Perryman was in that Spurs team. He was in the first team. Now, these days, 17-year-olds, they won't get in the first team in a Premier League or even a Championship club, will they?
No, you have to be exceptional to get into at that age.
No, because they're more likely, Jim, to buy someone from abroad.
Yeah.
They don't. They see if you were to look, if you looked around the Premiership, you'd find that in most teams, when you look at the team sheet, most teams would probably have between 1 and 3 English players.
Yeah.
The rest of them are foreign.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
the young players that are like at the football clubs now, they're not getting the opportunities at the club they're growing up with.
Yeah.
They're having to leave and find another base where they can get first team games. Because
Yeah.
if you don't get those games early on, then you're always going to be having to play catch up. Because if you don't fit in straight away and you don't make it, and then they'll go out and buy someone else,
Yeah.
and that's your opportunity gone. Yeah, as a young player.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you've got to be you have got to be exceptional in this
Yeah.
day, and there are some exceptional young players out there,
Mm.
but a lot of them end up dropping down from the Premier League and going and playing in the Championship
Yeah.
and,
Maybe on
and the First
on
Division.
loan. Going
Yeah,
out
on
on
loan,
loan.
yeah, on
Mm.
loan, yeah. And when you get into a situation like that, you don't get an attachment to a football club. Then
No.
you don't start to feel the club is part of you.
No.
From my point of view, Coventry gave me my chance, and I always felt, I never felt that I was ever going to move away,
No.
really. Then, when I was
Yeah.
playing,
Yeah.
but it was just it's just a feeling I had. I just thought, well, I'm at Coventry now, and they've given me my chance, and what I've got to do now is try to be some part of building the kind of team that
Yeah.
can go and win games. Because I remember the first season. I sometimes think about, what might have happened in that first season in the first division. We stayed up by 1 point, Jim.
Mm. Mm.
I just wonder what might have happened if we'd have gone down.
Yeah.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? What kind of football club would we have been?
Yeah.
Would we been able to build and come straight back up again? And be in it, because
Yeah.
the great thing about my career is I spent it in the first division all the way
Mm.
through my career.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, because when I left, as you mentioned earlier, Claude, I played over 200 games for the first team, and a lot of
Yeah,
them were in the first division. So when I went to Aston Villa, none of those players had played in the first division.
that's
They were
right.
in
Yeah,
the third and the second division, and then they
Right.
got promotion. So when I went there, I've got like 200 games under my belt
Mm.
playing
Mm.
in the first
Yeah.
division, and
oh, we sold you too cheaply, but we'll come back to that, Jim. I think, won't we?
yeah. That's a long way off from our story, really. Yeah.
Yeah.
So how when you came into the first team in that 69-70 season, obviously the Sky Blues were going, heading for Europe, best
Yes,
ever finish in the
yes.
first division. How did the senior players treat you? Were they good to you?
Yeah, I never had any problems. I think back now, and I do think to myself at times, well, how was I accepted?
Mm.
And I just seem to, as if like you get on with it, you play, you go out there, you try to give the team something different,
Mm.
hopefully help them to win a game. But I never encountered any kind of animosity, or people sort of saying, "Oh, you're not good enough," or something like that.
Mm.
I
Mm.
just felt it was as if like I got in there, Jim, and it just felt so natural to be there.
Yeah. Yeah.
It wasn't a feeling as if I'm out of place, because but just leading up to all that and getting in the first team, no one was telling me anything. No one's saying to me, look, you're playing really well at the moment, you know. Like Pat Saywood wasn't coming to me and saying, "Oh, you're putting it in there, mate. You're going to be in the first team before you know it."
Yeah.
None of that. It was just a big surprise when it did happen.
Was it? So
It
you
was a
weren't,
big.
you weren't sort of knocking on the
I
manager's
was
door.
an 18-year-old kid, yeah, who's just signed a pro contract, yeah. Both myself, David Icke, and Ivan, we all signed at the same time. Yeah,
Right.
and so we've got a pro contract now. And I remember it was £16 a week.
Wow.
Right. So I don't know what you were on, Jim, but it was
In
£16 a week.
69, I was on. I think I'd gone up to £8 a week.
Right, okay. So it's £16 a week. Yeah, but the thing with us is we knew we had to put some in the bank because we never, because all we got was a 1-year contract.
Yeah.
We only had a 1-year contract. But you didn't think of it as oh dear me, 1 year, I've got to look after myself. Yeah. You just thought, well, I've got a year's contract, I've got a pro. Yeah. So and the worst thing about it was I've got to pay my digs though now and all my food.
Yeah.
So I was probably worse off. Yeah.
Right. Oh, so you had to move out of the hostel.
Yeah, the hostel. Yeah. So we were now paying our own digs and everything, but it wasn't too. I got digs with a really nice lady who actually worked at the football club. Her name was Joyce, and she worked in the over in the ticket office. Yeah,
Right.
and you might have a program, Jim, and this is us, me and Ivan. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And that's an article in the program.
Wow.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So and Joyce worked in the club shop, and so but the thing was with me and Ivan is that you can see he always used to wear the tie. I didn't even know what a tie was in those days. You know what I mean? I was just a typical sort of casual shirt man. Anyway, but he used to go home. We used to play games on a Saturday. Then he'd go home, and I'd just be in there by myself. Yeah, sort of pottering about and everything. Yeah, but yeah, that was that was where I went to, and I can't remember how much it was, but I don't think it was very. I don't think we paid a lot of money. I was just looking at the game. You know, when we played Tottenham in that second leg, nearly 15,000 at the game. Yeah. So it's a good turnout.
And there was and the first replay was at Highfield Road, and there was a good crowd for that, I think.
Yes.
I think that was even more.
Yes.
And then it was a draw, and then you went back to White Hart Lane for the second replay.
Yeah.
And lost 1-0, didn't you?
We did. We lost 1-0, and it was disappointing. But the other interesting aspect of that, so I got a youth. I got a youth cap. Well, I got 2 or 3 in the end, but I was never part of the England youth team setup until they were the England youth team were at Lilleshall having a training week, and I hadn't been chosen. And anyway, we played them in a game at Highfield Road. And so we played now against the England youth team, our youth team, and we beat them 3-1. Right, and I scored in the game.
Right.
So it was after that game that I then got into the squad, but before that, I wasn't in the squad.
Right.
So I got an England youth. I got England youth caps. Yeah, which was really nice, really. But if we hadn't played that game, Jim, I just wondered if I got in there. You see, because it was quite a midfield actually. The players they had were Perryman, Cantello, and Tony Towers from Manchester, and all of those were playing in the first team.
Yeah.
Some good players there. Len Cantello was
great.
great.
And tough players as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
See, I played a different game from all of them. They like to tackle,
Yeah.
and I didn't. Yeah, I could, but I prefer to try and nick the ball away from people before it got
Mhm.
to them.
Mhm.
So I was always on the front foot, looking for the pass coming from another player, and then
Mm.
I was looking to try and intercept. So I
Mm.
didn't get into jab. But by intercepting now, I'm already on the front foot getting away.
Yeah.
That was something that was, part of my game. We was trying to anticipate without having to go into a crunch and tackle. Yeah.
That probably
Mm.
explains why you played nearly 600 matches in your
Probably,
career. Then you're rarely injured by
probably.
the sounds of things.
Well, yeah, I had a few injuries, but they were all the same injuries, and we'll come to one that really ruined my career later on when we keep talking, because I did end up with a couple of one particular nasty knee ligament problem, but we'll come to that in a while, yeah, because we've got a bit to go, yeah, so we
Yeah.
can move on, and
No.
there's my England youth cap,
Oh, lovely.
yeah,
Lovely.
yeah,
Superb.
so
Superb.
it was nice, and but we should have been should have been playing to go to the Little World Cup, right?
Mm. Mhm.
And we didn't get there. We didn't. We got knocked out,
Ah,
right? I think we lost to Scotland, and the competition was in Scotland as well,
right.
right? And we missed out on it, right? But
So,
there was one consolation for me though, yeah, is that I went to America with the team, the
of
first team.
course, yeah, 1970, the
Yeah,
long tour.
yeah. It was for me. It was magnificent. You know what I mean? Yeah. And
You played about 15 games, didn't you?
I did because I've got some of the I've got the programs, Jim, as you well know, and these are the
Yeah.
programs. Yeah,
Uh,
which are here. Yeah, and I was subbing a lot of them. Yeah, in those games,
I think
but
it's amazing you got all this memorabilia, Dennis.
oh
Yeah,
no, well that was me. I mean, look,
it's
this is what
fantastic.
I got off Jim. Jim kindly let me go to the archive in Coventry, and
yeah,
I took photographs of not all of them, but quite a few
yeah.
of the Coventry games, and I just put them in. I've just put them into this PowerPoint presentation. You see, I think that game West Ham
Is that
Yeah.
1970, is it?
Wednesday, February 1970 at
Yeah.
West.
That was the game.
The
Yeah,
other one
it was,
was
yeah. That was in the
Everton.
run.
Yeah.
You know, Dennis,
Yes.
Coventry have had a good run lately, winning 9 out of 10
Yeah.
games. And the
Yes.
last time they did that was that season when you came into the
Right.
first team. And
Mm.
it ended at Everton. They drew 0-0 at Goodison. I think you played at Goodison Park that day.
Probably.
And
Yeah.
the following week, we got
Yeah. Because
stuffed 3-0 at home by Chelsea.
There's the program.
That's
Yeah.
it. Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah.
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 A rear guard action, backs to the
Yes.
wall. They were champions that year.
0-0,
played
Jim.
so well.
0-0. There's the report. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a
Love it.
great performance.
And the one before that was the one before that, shooting on to Europe.
Yeah.
Oh, we probably want to come on to that, don't we, Jim?
And that was Coventry 2, Arsenal 0. You know.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, you only, I think you played about 10 games that season, but the following
Yes.
season you became a virtual ever present. You didn't play in Munich, but after
No.
Munich you were basically a first team regular, weren't you?
Yeah, and was
From
I
then
glad I
right
didn't?
through your career.
I was glad I didn't play in Munich as well,
Yes.
because it was a particularly bad game for poor Eric in goal.
Yeah.
Eric
Were you on the
McManus.
bench?
I was in the stand.
Yeah.
I was
Oh yes.
watching the game. I went over there.
I was in the stand that night.
Yeah, I went over there.
I was sitting in front of Roy Barry and Bill Glazier.
Yeah, yes.
Because they were both injured.
Yes.
And they were both pissed before the game started.
No surprise. No surprise.
Oh, yeah. What a difference those two would have made on the night, though, had they played.
Yeah, that was the thing.
Roy was still on crutches from his broken leg.
Gosh.
Yeah.
No, because it was a really tight. It was an afternoon kickoff, and it wasn't a very big crowd, was it, Jim?
No, it was a night game. It was a night game. You're thinking of Plovdiv.
And it was a wet evening, and it wasn't really good for a goalkeeper.
No,
and I think
there were
Eric
pools of water all over the pitch.
And it's very skiddy and everything. I think a few balls went under Eric's arms and all that.
Yeah.
He was a bit late getting down, but because of the wet, the ball was coming off a little bit quicker, and he wasn't quite reading it right. But it was such a shame because he didn't really play for the first team after that. Yeah,
no,
if you remember.
He didn't.
He didn't, did he?
I think he played a couple of league games, and then Bill recovered and came back, and that was the end of.
That was it. Yeah.
Eric. Yeah.
Because he moved on then, Eric, didn't he?
Yeah, he had a good career, didn't he?
He did. He had a very good career. Yeah. Do you ever see Eric? Does he ever come back?
No. The last I heard, he was coaching Stoke, I think.
Oh, right.
That's a few years ago. I don't know.
Yeah.
So you were ever present.
Yes. It's me in America.
All right.
There's Noel with a copper. Yeah.
Right.
Either going down well in New York because they were all Irish in New York. So he probably had a lot of invitations when we were out there, Noel.
Yeah.
Because of his ancestry. Yeah, but so
you were getting called up for the under-23s soon after that.
Yeah.
And you won. I think you won 6 under-23 caps, didn't you?
I did. Yeah.
And I was there at Highbury the night you scored 2 against Holland.
Yes.
I was living in London by then.
Yes.
And I'm just so thrilled for you that night. You were just superb, absolutely superb.
Well, it's interesting, Jim, because some of the headlines that were in the paper after that, were very interesting, because it was
that was Alf Ramsey was still the manager, wasn't he?
He was actually, because he was managing then. Because there's another story as well about because there was an headline. There was a headline here. So this was Derek Henderson writing in the
Telegraph.
Yeah, the Telegraph. Yeah.
Well, I can't read it. What does it say?
Okay, well, it's Mortimer emerging as England material.
Oh yeah,
right.
Yeah, you were.
So and we played. What we got? Coventry City 1, Liverpool 0. Yeah, so it was.
So Dennis, you must have been. I presume the answer is going to be yes, but the fact you never got a full England cap. You must have been mystified by that. At some point, you must have thought.
I was never mystified by it. I was very pragmatic about it, really, because I think there was a lot of good players around at that time, and I think the problem is that if I'd have got into that squad a lot earlier, i.e., when I was at the top of my game playing for Coventry, then I could have probably then been like someone like Terry McDermott, where you're forever chosen in the squad.
Yeah.
Because once you got into it, very rarely did it change. Yeah. Because I remember certain players I used to think as well, like Derek Staven, great left back at West Brom, but very rarely played for England, but was always in the squad because Kenny Sansom was keeping him out of the team.
Yeah.
Right. And yeah, so you had people like Terry McDermott who went along all the time, Terry, and never really played, but he was just part of the squad all the time. And the manager didn't want us. The manager obviously liked that setup. He didn't want to move people on and bring new people in because he had a good. He probably felt he had a good balance of characters.
Yeah.
You know, because this is what you want in a football team. You want everyone to sort of hit off with each other. And you have your funny guys, you have your straight guys, you have your in-betweenies and everything. But you all, you're all mixed together really well. And then when you go out on the football field, you're all in it together. Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's what you want. Now, I remember, and it was I think it was, where was it when Don Revie took over?
Yeah.
So when Don Revie took over as the England manager, he called together 90 English players to a meeting in London, no, Manchester, and he'd just taken over the job, and he brought these 90 English players together and said, "Look, you're the people that I'm going to be choosing the next England teams from," and I was part of that group, so I was 21 at the time. Yeah, and I remember that the very first team that he ever chose, Don Revie, after getting the job, there was a doctor who worked with the England squad who they gave a benefit game to, and he was from Sheffield Wednesday, and I got chosen to play in a team, yeah, chosen from sort of Midlands, sort of north of England. No one from London or anything, just because it was played at Sheffield Wednesday, so that people didn't have to try. And I was part of that squad, and it was the very first squad he ever chose. And that was, from my point of view, that was really good. But what happened to me is that, and you might remember this, Jim, I ended up with an injury to my knee, and I ended up in hospital for 12 days.
Yeah. That Boxing Day against Stoke.
Yeah, Stoke, yeah. And I was given a cortisone jab straight after the game by the doctor, which is Sergeant, who was our surgeon. Yeah, I worked at Coventry, North Warwick. And usually when you got an injury like that, it was only a tweak on my knee, and we had the FA Cup coming on the following week. And really, you should let something like that settle down before you do anything. But because he was a bit anxious about, sort of waiting too long and then me being at the game, he decided to give me an injection. The injection went bad. 2 days later, my leg was throbbing, my knee, and I ended up phoning the doctor up, and I ended up in Coventry, North Warwick for 12 days. I never got out of bed for 12 days.
God.
Now, that season now was me becoming this consistent player, Jim,
Yeah.
I've got a lot more strength now. I've been playing for a lot of games and everything, and I'm starting to feel like a 90-minute man, really.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the team's doing well too.
Yeah.
And when the team's doing well, it helps you, right? So I got in. So I missed the rest of the season, and I got back for the last 2 games. But if I hadn't got injured and that's the rest of my season had carried on the way it was, it had been. At the end of that season, having been chosen by Don Revie, obviously I was on his checklist. There could have been a chance that because the home internationals were the things that you played in those days. Yeah. There was no European Championships or anything like that. It was World Cup, and that was it. So now I could have been in there, sort of at 20, 21, 22. But for that injury. So I've now missed that opportunity to get into that squad.
Yeah.
And that really was the thing that sort of did me, I think, from the point of view again. Because even moving to Coventry, to Villa, you know, when we had the great season in 77, 70, 76, 77, when we won the League Cup, and we were outstanding. The England team never changed.
No.
They never changed.
Oh,
But I got to captain the B team
Right.
at that time. Yeah. But never really sort of got the what's the name? We played we went to Japan after after the European year. We went to Japan. And this was a program I got. And you might see it's we played against Santos.
Right.
And this is the program. Fantastic program.
Yes.
And Santos stayed in the same hotel in Thailand, in Bangkok. This was the last game of our tour. We went to South Korea, Japan, and then we
Yeah.
had this game. It was a great tour again, you know. So
Yeah. Well, yeah. Alan Green told us all about that. He.
It was a super trip. Yeah.
You played against Pele.
Yeah, we played Pele in that game, and I got it. That's all autographed. That program.
Oh, fantastic.
Stayed in the same hotel and everything. Here's a good picture of us. This is a picture of us. Mick Maguire,
Right.
Ramsbottom, Neil Ramsbottom,
Yeah.
Billy Rafferty, and me. Yeah,
Yeah.
It's brilliant.
That was us in Japan. Yeah. So it was good, and then obviously Noel got the sack. And because it was Bob Dennison who went out to Japan with us, if you remember.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
Because Noel got the sack because we didn't finish as well as everyone expected. Yeah.
No, I think it was the Rochdale Cup defeat and the
Yes.
What else? Oh, the whole cup defeat at home, and Derek Robbins was, of course, he was still there at that point, and he didn't like failure, did he?
No. Not many chairmen did, because if you remember, Jim, it was always it's either going to be the chairman out or the manager out.
Yeah.
And because the chairman always held the bigger cards, it was always the manager who was the one that was out. Yeah. And so Noel left, but then we brought in Gordon Milne and Joe Mercer.
Yeah. How'd you get on with them?
Very well. I mean, obviously Gordon was one of my idols.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, the thing was that when I was because obviously the previous years, Ian St. John came, didn't he, to Coventry? Yeah. And again, he was one of my idols, you know, being a Liverpool player. So, you know, to get to sort of play with someone who you sort of watched and everything was just something quite different. And then Jeff Strong came to the club as well, didn't he?
Yeah.
From Liverpool.
Yeah.
So we were in the Texaco Cup then, weren't we, the following year, which we didn't do too good in.
No.
But I tell you what's an interesting story. Do you remember Chris Chilton came to the club? Of course,
yeah.
Well, in that summer, Jim, I'd gone to Australia with an England touring party. And the original England touring party had all pulled out. So this was now the second England touring party. So it was people who would have jumped at the opportunity to go to Australia, and play some football, at the first go. But the guys who England had put forward were all the normal players who played in the England team, but they didn't want to go.
No.
So anyway, the story goes that they phoned up to ask the club if Ernie Machin would like to go on this touring party, and Ernie didn't want to go apparently, and I could understand that. Yeah. So Noel recommended me. Yeah. And so I got on the trip.
Great.
It was great. Yeah, I was only 19 at the time. It was brilliant, you know. And do you remember Chilton and Wagstaff, who played for Hull?
Yeah.
Right, who was scoring goals left, right, and centre in the second division. Well, both of them were on the trip,
Right.
and I was quite impressed with Chris Chilton.
Mm.
And when I came back and we started the new season, Noel asked me what I thought of Chris Chilton,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I said, well, he's a good player. He's a good player. Yeah. I liked him, you know. I mean, I wasn't a scout, but what I saw about him playing
Yeah.
with Wagstaff, the pair of them hit it off.
Yeah.
But I think taking one out of the two
Yeah.
was always going to be a problem, and it proved really, because you know Chris came to Coventry but didn't really do anything.
No, I'll tell you a story about Chris Chilton. He told me this when he was alive. He drove a Mini, and he was up and down from Hull to Coventry in this Mini every week. And he reckons that was the cause of all his back problems.
Yeah,
In
probably.
the end, he had to retire because of his back.
Well, listen, I mean, the size of them driving a Mini, Jim.
I was thinking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there were little Minis in those days, weren't they?
It's 3 hours this day and age one way.
Yeah.
You know.
No,
It
that
was
was
sad because he'd scored goals for fun for Hull for
Yeah.
years and
he
years.
did. No, he was.
Yeah.
So this was the game. This was the England versus Holland, right?
Oh yeah, I've got the program. Yeah.
Right, and there's my little handbook that went with it.
All
Right,
right.
and then and this is a headline.
Dennis, a real goal menace. Yeah.
And then, but the best one was this, which I thought was out of order.
New Charlton. Oh.
Blimey, that's yeah.
I just thought to myself, what the reporters know, I didn't play a game of football anything like Bobby Charlton. You know, I didn't play like Bobby Charlton.
No.
And it was just because the two goals I scored, Jim, were blasted from outside the box.
Yeah.
Which is where I got a lot of my goals anyway.
Yeah.
You know, just balls coming out of the box, someone headed it out, and then coming onto it, and then smashing it into the back of the net.
Yeah.
But it was
So
that you know that game, yeah. You know, you think to yourself, well, yeah, there's a chance now. You know, you score 2 goals and everything, you go forward. And this was me after the game for the Telegraph.
right.
It was me washing my car, and there's my shirt.
All right.
Still
Have you still got your shirt?
I have got it, Jim. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
good. So Dennis, we've only got about 5 minutes left.
Okay.
So what I think my last question would be, can you tell us about how the circumstances around the move to Villa?
Yeah. Okay. So the season's going really well. Yeah, we started off really well, and I remember we played Villa at Villa Park and we lost 1-0. But up to that point, we were really right up the top of the league, and we lost 1-0 to a scrappy goal. That was the first time really I think I'd been to Villa Park.
Yeah.
And so you know, Villa were never part of our landscape, Jim, were they?
No, they weren't. No.
We didn't go anywhere near them. Yeah.
No.
Birmingham we did, and West Brom, but never Villa. So I remember coming in then just the week before Christmas, and David Cross, as I said earlier, tapped me on the shoulder and he said, "Look, I had my old manager on the phone last night, Ron Saunders. He's at Aston Villa." And I just said, "Oh, okay." I was a bit blasé about it, and I just sort of just didn't bother really. I just, "Oh, okay," and it just walked off really from him. Anyway, the next morning, I get a phone call at 8 o'clock from the secretary's office, telling me to get to the ground, not asking me to get to the ground, telling me to get to the ground. Yeah. So I'm up by now, and I've jumped into my car, and so as I'm driving in now, I'm thinking to myself, well, what's this? And then I start thinking about what Dave Cross had said. Yeah, I'm thinking, well, I wonder if it's Aston Villa. So I guess the Villa goes in quickly now. I'm told by Eddie Plumley, look, I'm going to drive you over to Stonebridge Island, and we're going to meet up with Ron Saunders, and then he's going to take you into Villa Park.
That was it.
So you're thinking to yourself, well, what do I say? Do I go, I don't want to go, Eddie? You got to remember now, Jimmy's back.
Yeah. He was back as managing director, yeah.
Absolutely. He's back now. So I still haven't met Jimmy Hill, by the way. Still never shook hands with him, right?
Really?
So when I first joined the club, I never shook hands with him. And then when he came back, I don't remember ever going in because once I went to see Ron Saunders, that was the end of my career at Coventry City.
Yeah.
Because I then spoke with Ron. That was on the Tuesday. Yeah. So I've signed on that day. So my next day then, I'm at the training ground, not Coventry, but at Bodymore Heath. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I've signed. I'm now with Aston. So my first game now is West Ham at home on the Boxing Day. And I don't care what any footballer says, but the fact that you've been bought for £175,000, all the eyes are going to be on you. Yeah. Now, at Coventry, all the eyes weren't on me. I was just part of a bigger group. But now I'm going into a game where I just feel like now I'm the focus of their attention. And that was I felt that was I felt personally that was a very frightening time, from the point of view of having to play now in a team you've never played with, players you never played with, having been so comfortable with the players you're usually playing with, and part of the furniture, and all of a sudden now you've uprooted. So I've gone into that game, and they were about level with us in the league. They weren't doing anything brilliant. They were about the same position as us. I think we were about the same number of points. So we played the game and we've won 4-1. So I've had a good debut, really. I couldn't have asked for anything more than that. But it was the crowd, Jim. It was 52,000.
Yeah.
Just unbelievable.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And you sort of think to yourself, well, crikey, who are this? Who are Aston Villa?
Yeah.
I'm still asking that question now, Dennis.
Yeah. But who are they? Where have you come to? What have you come to? Yeah.
Yeah.
And all I can say to that then is the rest is history. Yeah. But one of the great things about I'll just leave you a second.
Oh. Dennis has just wandered off. For those on Spotify, I have to describe what's happening here. Oh, he's come back. Here he is.
This is a cartoon that was in the actual Telegraph.
Oh, right.
And I've had this signed by Gordon Milne and myself, right? And it's a picture of Father Christmas in the top of a house with two kids, and he's been held hostage.
Yeah.
And down below is Gordon Milne and Jimmy Hill with a policeman, right?
Yeah.
And what it says, there's a little cartoon at the bottom of here, yeah. And what it says is, the policeman's got a letter, yeah, and it's a ransom note. It says they won't free Santa until Dennis Mortimer returns to the city.
Wonderful.
And that was in the Telegraph. That was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
I many years later I kept it, I cut it out, I put it in this frame, and I got Gordon to sign it. Yeah.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
There was a thing on Twitter the other day where somebody posed the question, which player from your club were you most upset at losing? And I immediately think Dennis Mortimer.
Yeah.
Immediately.
Well,
Yeah.
I felt the same way, Jim. You know,
Yeah.
I never, there was never anything in me that wanted to leave Coventry
No.
City. You know what I mean? They'd given me my opportunity, and I just felt that we were now starting to make a team and put because
Yeah.
I remember talking to Barry Powell, and we just signed Barry.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he said I came there because I wanted to come and play alongside you, and
Yeah.
then within 2 weeks you've gone. Yeah,
Yeah.
you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Yeah,
Yeah.
and you know, and so that relationship, because he was a good player, Barry. He scored a lot of goals when he came to
Yeah.
the club.
Yeah.
Well, and
Yeah,
you know, and you know, just over about a year later, we signed Ian Wallace and Terry Yorath,
yeah,
and
yeah. And
built a
Fergie
really
was
good
starting to do
team.
things. Yeah,
Yeah.
you
And
know, I
Barry
mean,
Powell and yourself, Dennis, are similar players as well.
yeah.
Yeah.
But Barry was. I see. I always felt Mick Maguire got a raw deal.
Mm.
I always felt
Yeah.
Mick was a better player than some people thought he was. Yeah,
Mm.
and because when he went, I think when he went to Norwich, he was quite an important team,
He
a player in
was.
the team.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I don't know why we let him go. Really, maybe it's because we had too many
Wow.
midfield players. And the reason why I left Jim was that the club wanted the money.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the bank manager was knocking on the door.
Yeah,
Yeah. You
and
know,
Jimmy, this was
you,
what Jimmy was all about, really.
you
Yeah.
were the collateral damage to Larry Lloyd being signed.
Yes.
You know,
Yeah.
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 that was it, you know, and that was the worst thing that they ever did was buying
Yeah.
Larry Lloyd because it wrecked the club for 3
Yeah.
years.
So this is this is a team
Yeah.
that Don Revy picked for
Right.
the England thing, and so I've still got. There's the letter
Uh-huh.
with Don Revy's autograph on the bottom.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I was just
So
thinking, Jim. So we signed Larry Lloyd, who wrecked us financially, goes off to win the European Cup with Forest, and we
Yeah.
let Dennis go for probably. We should have sold him for far more. And Dennis goes off and captains a team that wins the European Cup.
I know. I know.
We
yeah, well,
got it
at the
wrong. We got
time,
it wrong somehow, didn't we?
at the time I left, I mean, they were talking about previous to that for about 300,000, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was about the going rate at the time.
It's
You know,
happened so often. It happens
yeah,
so often. Yeah.
yeah. But
Quick sale.
Jimmy obviously wanted the money. He wanted, to get some money in the bank. And the
Yeah.
thing was, is that this is it. We can
Yeah.
sell them, and get 175,000, and the bank manager's happy now.
Yeah. Keep the wolf from the door. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Dennis, it's been
yeah.
a wonderful evening chatting to you again. And I always love your company. You got some great stories, and you're one of my all-time favourite Coventry players, as you know. And just thank you very much for joining us this evening. It's been
No, thanks.
great fun.
I've probably gone on a bit too long in certain areas because
You always do.
we've only got halfway through, to be honest, Jim. Yeah.
Well, we
Well,
don't hear about the villa, do we?
No. I'm talking. This is my book. It's called Sent to
sense of
Coventry,
inventory. I like that.
and
It's,
that's my PowerPoint presentation.
Well,
On,
yeah,
on,
we
on,
should give your book a plug as well because you had a book. Your book came out
I
last
have
year,
got a
didn't
book,
it?
but I've gotten on, Jim. They're all gone.
Have they really? Oh,
Yeah,
wonderful.
he's done
yeah.
lots of.
I got rid of the ones that I had. Yeah, yeah.
He's done lots of book signings up at Paul Hill's.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Paul, the football cabin in. I've got
Lichfield.
a couple of outlets which I've used in Coventry. One's in the market where
Hmm.
there's a guy who does a lot of framing for me of pictures and everything, and
Hmm.
I take because I've got a replica European Cup, you see,
Right.
which I take out and let people have photographs with it and everything.
Great.
And I go and have a day in Lichfield on the market, and people come along, have a photograph, buy some merchandise and
Yeah.
everything. And then I'll go up to Paul's place and and it's John. I usually deal with John, who is mate.
Yeah.
and we have a sort of an opportunity, usually at Christmas time, when it's a garden centre with a lot of little huts that are in there with lots of people selling all kind of stuff. And what I do is I go up and spend a couple of hours there in the morning, and then a couple of hours in the evening, and you just stay open a little bit longer. And it's just to try and get people in, and I try to help them out, and do that. But it's no, it's good fun. It gets me out of the house, which is the important thing. And but what it does, it keeps my memory going.
Yeah.
One of the important things is, I think, at our age is is keeping that those thought processes going, and remembering things and everything, because it's one of those things. As you get older, you forget to turn the tap off, but you remember when you played your first game playing football. Yeah,
Well,
Absolutely.
the
Yeah.
idea of these podcasts we'll do with
Yeah.
ex-players is this will go into the archives,
right.
the Sky Blue archive, and
Yeah.
it's there for all to see forevermore. Which is we want footballers' memories, and
Well, I've
the more
always
the
said,
merrier.
yeah, 'cause I've always felt that players themselves should do more podcasts
Mm.
Yeah, I think definitely.
between each other, reminiscing. Where you
Yeah.
get them in there, and you reminisce with them, and as you say, that now, I mean, I don't know if you don't have a museum, do you, Jim?
No, we've got archives.
Over
We've got a lot of
got your
memorabilia,
archive,
but
yeah.
we
Well,
haven't got
you
a
see,
museum.
yeah, because what I'm suggesting at Villa with their new museum that they're putting in is to have archive of players
Yeah.
talking and obviously scoring, because you can't let that bit of history
No.
disappear.
No,
I,
It's like your Sports Argus, Jim.
Mm.
It's a tremendous collection. To go in there and see all those still in the box,
yeah.
from all that time. And for you, it must be the ideal tool for you to remember things, because
Yeah.
it's all written in those in the Sports Argus. Yeah.
It is.
And
Yeah.
it was great. Well, I loved it when I went through it. I was taking
Mm.
photographs, and I put it all, into my sort of PowerPoint presentation. It just brings them all alive, really.
Well,
And that's what.
try and get to Coventry for a game soon.
Yes. Well, I did the Sunderland game,
Yeah.
but I'll try and get one before the end of the season again as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Be good to
I-
see
I'm
you.
I'm I'm open. I'm open. I really am open that the top four. In that sort of that playoff zone, and
Mm.
get an opportunity to go to Wembley again.
Yeah. It would
Yeah.
be good.
But make it happen this time. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It
I
would
mean,
be
Well,
great.
on that note,
the last one, Coventry were robbed,
Yeah.
which was obviously Man United. Yeah,
Mm.
because that should have
yeah,
been a final. Yeah,
Yeah.
which would have been tremendous for the football club again.
Mm.
But
Yeah.
Jim, it's picking up. The crowds are great. Yeah,
Fantastic. Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
very good. But it's only because of the team. The team are the ones that sort of make it happen.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, the players on the pitch making things happen.
Yeah.
And that's what you need. You need the team to make it happen. Yeah.
and if you
But
get if you get 30,
as we said, yeah. Sorry, Claudio. As
so
we said the
if you
other
get
day.
sorry,
Go
I
on.
was going to say
Yeah.
if you get 30,000 on Saturday,
Yes.
that'd be like back in the time when you were playing, because
Absolutely.
it must be, Jim, 3 home games in a row.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I think we'll leave it there.
Okay. No,
For
thanks a
those
lot.
watching, or Spotify, like and subscribe. If you want to contact Jim, he's at claryborton@gmail.com. Dennis, I'm sure.
Yeah, Dennis, we'll put I'll send you a link to the podcast when it's live, so you can
Okay.
send it to all your family and friends.
Okay.
And
All right,
thank you
thanks
again,
a lot.
Dennis. Absolutely fascinating. And if we weren't time restricted, we could go on for hours, couldn't we? I know you could. Bit like your engine when you used to play.
Yeah.
Thanks, Dennis.
Yeah, thank you very much. And
Thanks a lot.
we'll be back.
Thanks a lot, guys. Yeah. See you
Good
soon.
night.
See you soon. Ta-ra.
Bye-bye.
Company dismissed. Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming. Thank you.